Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Asset Capability Statements What's Changed webinar. So we've got myself, I'm Graham from the training team, and I'm going to be assisting Carl today in the delivery of this webinar. So throughout the session, Carl's going to be doing most of the delivery, and then occasionally I'll step in to provide some assistance, or perhaps I'll be responding if any questions come through as well. So I'm going to pass on to Carl, who'll be delivering the session. Just one last thing before we get started, just a reminder that the line is muted, so we will be unable to hear you if you're yelling at the screen. So if there is a chat feature if you want to send anything through, if you've got any questions throughout, and you can send them through. Also, we are recording the session for training purposes, but also to assist anybody who isn't able to make it to one of these sessions. They'll be able to view the recording. Right, so over to Carl. Oh, actually, no, I'm going to cover the next slide, aren't I? So I'll cover the next slide, which talks about what we're going to do by the end of the session. So we're going to describe to you why we're making this change. So why the new application and the new process. We'll look at that new workflow process. That workflow ties in quite heavily with the application, and there's a representation of the workflow within the presentation and the application, so we'll show you that soon. We'll look at some of the new and improved features and the user interface. There are some changes to the required information and those new supported asset types that some of you have been yelling out for. We'll talk about some of them and their availability now. We'll finish off with what's coming next. So that's what's next for you in terms of the ACS. There'll be some support options, also what's next in terms of migration and go live, and then what's next for the operations customer portal. All right, so now it's over to Carl. We had a false start, but now it's his turn. All right, here he is.
Hey, everybody. So I'll start off by covering why we are making this change. So some of the key things that we're pulling in is that this improves information sharing. So the Operations Customer Portal program is part of our system operations strategy to improve the way that information is shared between the industry and system operator. The original ACS started being used in about 2009, and it was time to bring these legacy applications back up to industry standard. And by legacy applications, we mean the Red Spider applications of Asset Capability Statement, the internal one System Operator Model database, Dispensations and Equivalence database, Planned Outage Coordination Process, and New Zealand Generation Balance. The other application that we have on the OCP is the Awful's Data Portal. This has already been rebuilt and on the portal at the moment, and having these apps in one place makes it easier for asset owners to access them and provide information to the system operator. Also, now that this ACS is in the OCP, we can better integrate future applications that use ACS data as a single point of truth as well, such as station names, generator maximum continuous output, and the like. And also the new OCP is much more scalable for us to be able to add future applications to it. So the first slide that we're going to jump into is discussions about the new ACS workflow. The aim of introducing this workflow is, and increasing what was the original workflow in the legacy database, is to ensure we have robust control over changes made to an ACS, that we have increased traceability, that we still maintain the AO admin control of publishing an ACS, which was present in the legacy database. We've added configurable notifications when a station ACS has entered a particular state and it's within a user's watch list. We have better transparency and auditability of changes that are made in the ACS, such as who made the change and when, and better guidance for the asset owner, which is knowing the state that they're in and what the next expected action is. So we'll discuss how the workflow is applied to each version of an asset capability statement, referred to as an ACS. The version of an ACS is defined as when a draft version of input data and AO comments has been published. Input data being numbers, text, attachments, and the like. So we'll take a look at and run through the creation of an asset or station and the steps taken by the asset owner and the system operator as the ACS progresses through that workflow. So the first state that we have is draft. And you can see by the blue surround and the blue arrow that this is an AO action. So when a new ACS is created for a generating station or an existing ACS is modified, the ACS will enter the draft state. So while in the draft state, the ACS is only visible to the asset owner until it is moved through into published. Publishing of an ACS, the same as the legacy application, can only be done by an admin user from your organization. And asset owners should have their own processes to determine when an ACS is ready to be published. If the asset owner needs to alter information that has been entered in a published version, then this will move that version as a previous version of the ACS into assessment stopped. So this is what the system operator will see, whereas on this asset owner side, this will create a copy and have it in a new draft state that is editable and able to be republished when ready. Conversely, you could also roll back this draft and it will put the previous version back into published. That's if the draft is not required or created an error. The next state is an SO action, denoted by the red box around the state and the red arrow. When ACS are in a published state, system operator is able to begin assessment, and this is where input data and attachments is assessed against the asset owner performance obligations and technical requirements of the system operator companion guides. So the SO will now be able to add comments against each input field in line with the input field, which was not present in the legacy database. This allows us to provide more detailed assessment and context to a particular field. Again, if the AO needs to edit ACS information, then the same process applies with moving the previous version, moving the current version into assessment stopped, and then creating a copy and moving it through into a draft state again to be republished. Once assessment is completed, there are two possible outcome states, either accepted or information needed. For accepted, this state means that the provided information for assets and the station level is relevant to their current ACS stage. So ACS stage is more like a commissioning stage or lifecycle stage of the asset, these being planning, pre-commissioning, final, or decommissioned, which is a new state that we've added, a new stage that we've added. And this state accepted means that the information provided for these assets relevant to the stage is acceptable to the system operator. In the information needed state, this means that further information is required by the system operator. And again, in either of these two final states, the asset owner admin or edit users can create a new draft, provide the relevant information or reasoning, and then submit this back to the system operator by publishing. The other added feature that we've put into the new system is configurable notifications. So for each of these state transitions, all users can configure email notifications, which will notify you when stations in your watch list move to a state that you may be interested in, being any of the blue boxes that we can see here, apart from draft. I realize this may be complex, so do remember that we do have a recording of the webinar as well as animations and workflow tutorials as part of the new application that will be going out as part of communication to asset owners, as well as the user guide. So let's jump in quickly into what's new. We've created more of a modern navigation design in line with industry standard of most web-based applications that you would interact with. A more intuitive user interface compared to the old system. A workflow summary section on the main page within an ACS. This provides you with greater detail around what state it's in and the next expected action. We're using accordion display structures now rather than page-by-page displays. So this just allows us to have all of the sections on the page and able to expand and collapse accordions relevant to what you're interested in looking at the time. We've also got some new supported asset types, which I'll get through to in the next slide, as well as the comment functionality that we've enhanced, and I've briefly touched on that, and I will also describe it within the run through on the application itself. We've increased the visibility of error counts and flags by using icons and counts and having them associated with sections, assets, and at the tab level, which we'll get into as well. And as I mentioned, the configurable notifications based on states and your station watch list. So the new supported asset types. For asynchronous generators, we previously had single and double squirrel cage assets, as well as wound rotor. We didn't quite have support for some of the other types, being doubly fed induction generator. So we've changed wound rotor to be a more general variable rotor resistance type. And this will, any data that's ported across will still be kept as it was. It's just that the asynchronous machine type will be changed to variable rotor resistance. We've added additional fields and support for doubly fed induction generators, and added support for inverter connected generators as well, which has been a long time coming, which is solar photovoltaic and full-scale converter wind turbine generators. The others are transmission line or feeder. So for this one, this is just the feeder that is in between the generating station and your point of connection. We're not expecting generator asset owners to provide distribution level supporting information. If we need that, we will get in touch with the relevant distribution asset owner. So just the line between your point of connection and the generating station. For example, it could be a feeder between a wind farm and a point of connection. The other asset types that we have greater support of is the enhanced functionality around reactive power compensation devices. So we support shunt and series reactor now, shunt capacitor, static VAR compensator, static synchronous compensator, and synchronous condenser, and all of the relevant fields associated with those as well. So we're going to jump into the application and start running through some things. In this demonstration, we will look at creating and editing a station ACS, adding, removing, and duplicating assets, moving an ACS through the workflow and the relevant information that's displayed based on the states, adding AO and SO comments, viewing of the history, and exporting of the ACS. So what I've got up here now is the staging environment for ACS. It will be the same when you navigate through to the production environment. Awfuls we already have on the production website, and we'll be adding ACS when we move through into Go Live. So you'll be presented by this main screen and required to log in. Now logins are associated with your Microsoft account. So you'll be able to click on your particular user log on, and mostly it would be relevant to your browser. So most organizations will have your Microsoft account logged in with the browser. Otherwise, put in your information here and then type in your password. Now, it's important to understand that the data that I'm going to show you today is all fictitious, so there's no shared information as part of these webinars. It's just stations that have been created for the purposes of demonstration here. So once you're logged in, you'll be able to navigate through to the ACS. And the first thing that you are presented with is a list of statements and a couple of user menus, and we'll run through those shortly. On the left-hand side, you can see the main user menu. So you have statements, users, and contacts. When you're looking at the statements page, you can see, first off, there's some tick boxes down the side here. These are used for exporting multiple station ACSs through to an Excel format, and you're able to do multiple at a time. And these will just be shown within your browser once they're ready. You can either select one, multiple, or all of them. And in the next column, you have watch list. So ticking these stars on the watch list will put them into your Station ACS watch list. And I'll show you that just now. Under the user profile, you can see that you've got details here for contacting Transpower for help, a user guide and understanding how the system works and to help the users, and then also manage notifications and log out. So if we go into manage notifications, you can see that on the right hand side here is my watch list. So I have a number of stations which correspond to the stars that I've ticked back on the statements page, or I can add them here one by one or multiple. So you can add multiple stations, all of the stations, or none of the stations. As an example, I'll just add a couple. And on the left-hand side here, you can see the state transition events, which users might wish to be notified about. I've ticked information needed as asset owner at the moment, which is shown on under the user profile menu. So this is my organization and my role. And I may be interested in only information needed or when both information needed and accepted as final states. So these correspond with the states that we've already talked about in the slides a little earlier. I can save that notification settings and then navigate back to statements. The rest of the information that we have here is columns of station code, station name, network connection, which is new. This is a replacement of the grid connected and embedded field, which is within the station level for an ACS. So now asset owners are able to tell us whether they're connected to Transpower or connected to other distribution companies. So it just gives us a better sense of where this unit is connected. The form of energy, the stage, which is the ACS stage or asset lifecycle stage, if you will. It's planning, pre-commissioning, final, and decommissioned. The state, which we talked about in the workflow, and then the timestamp, which is associated when this particular ACS has moved into this state. Next to that, we have the number of errors for that station as a total, the number of compliance flags, the action of either viewing or editing that ACS, and then also the history, which I'll cover off a little later. Each of these columns are able to be sorted either by station code or station name or form of energy, for example. The other thing that we can do is add complex filters. So, for example, if I wanted to know when ACSs had changed after a particular date, I can add in a date here, let's say the 27th of November, and that filters that down by which stations have had a state change after that date, or I can do before a particular date. You can do things such as form of energy or network connection, and you can also stack them as well. So let's say stage and form of energy. I'm interested in hydro stations in a stage of, well, in this case, it's only the stages of draft. Let's try another. Gas, for example. So I can filter down by a particular stage or state. Pre-commissioning, for example, and that will filter down to the one I'm interested in. Another helpful filter is watch list, further down here. So this will filter out the ones that you've added into your watch list, or conversely, the ones that are not in your watch list. There are some additional filters which we've added in that are mainly used by system operators, such as what grid zone, TPR region, and outage region each of these stations are in, but they're also available to the asset owner. The other thing you can see at the bottom of this page is the number of rows per page, which can be 5, 10, or 25. And if you're on a lesser number of rows per page, then you'll see, and you have enough stations, then you'll see pagination down here as well. Now that we've talked about this, before I go into creating a new ACS, I'll run through the other two menu items that we have in the main menu, which is users and contacts. So for users, this can only be accessed by the asset owner admin. You see here, it's very similar to the list of statements for an ACS. You can see name, email, user permissions, and last login time, as well as control for each editing each asset owner and deleting as well. or filtering based on user permissions. For example, in this case, edit. The other thing that the Asynchronous admin can do is request to add a new user, and here they will just fill in the user details relevant to the user, user permissions, and also which stations in particular that this user would have access to. And we've made a change to the old database whereby if you have created an ACS yourself, you'll automatically be given access to that ACS, which I know is a bit of a bugbear for some users as well as myself. If we drop back into the other main menu item is contacts. Very similar to users, we have full name, primary phone, secondary phone, email, notes, and control of editing, deleting, or creating new contacts. Again, this is just some contact details, phone number, and notes. These contacts are used within an ACS for either operational or technical queries, and it may be helpful for you to add additional notes in here relating to user role, responsibility, or what that person is particularly there for in support of the station. Before going into creating a new one, I will just touch on this quite powerful feature that we have up here, which is quick filter. So you can either use this to filter by any of the input information that you have within the dashboard, or any particular information that's not part of this metadata can actually search from within ACSs as well. So for example, I can search on 3-letter codes, or you can search on any supporting materials, such as if I had uploaded a particular file and I couldn't remember which one it was uploaded to. Find the file name. It is a fairly powerful feature and can search across all of the information within an ACS, but mainly I would expect it to be used for station name or code or quick filters such as that. So let's jump straight into creating a new station level ACS. This is up on the top right hand side here. First thing you are greeted with is a number of tabs across the top here, as well as where you first start to see the validation for a particular statement. So red here are the mandatory fields, which is denoted by red, and then orange as the required fields. So for mandatory fields, these are all required to be populated before the ACS can be saved for the first time. So for example, I will just create a dummy station. You can add your plant or station 3-letter code. So this will be integrated with the Transpower approval process for 3-letter codes. So as they are approved as part of that process, they will appear here. So for example, I can add any one, or if your particular station isn't required to have a 3-letter code, as in it's not really participating in the market for offering, then you can also tick NA as well. Add your form of energy, scheme if that's relevant, or tick NA. So for example, this could be your block dispatch group or hydro river scheme. The island, adding your primary and secondary contacts, which were as part of the main menu up here. Your network connection. So this, as I mentioned earlier, this has a list of all of the distribution companies up here, as well as Transpower for grid connected at the top. Your grid injection point, nominal voltage at point of connection, installed capacity at point of connection, and ACS stage. So now that I've filled in all of the mandatory fields, all that's left is these required fields. I can see by the orange area here, and also shown up at the top on the tab as well. You also notice that within additional information section, this is the first time we start to see dynamic fields. So this is either fields within the section or new sections controlled by some of these dynamic fields. Attachments also aren't able to be uploaded until the ACS has been saved for the first time, so let's just go and save that. The first thing that you're greeted with is the name of the station up here, followed by the workflow summary. So this is fully contextual to the workflow itself, all of the items within this colored box. Sorry if it's not as bright as I'd hoped. It's quite high contrast on this display screen. So it's yellow for a draft state with an associated icon, with the state being here, and underneath tells you whether it's in latest or historical. And I will cover off viewing historical statements once I get through to history. There's also some help text here around what state it's in and what is the next expected action, as well as the control buttons here relative to your user role. So myself, I'm admin. So as admin for this asset owner organization, I'm able to publish or roll back the ACS if I created a station in error. The next section down is the version ACS summary. So within this section, it provides you a condensed view of other information within collapsed fields below, as well as some information on last activity and a total of warnings and flags. And then also some secondary actions to the right-hand side, which is view version history and download this ACS, which just does an export of just this ACS as an Excel file. Once I have saved the ACS for the first time, I'm able to upload attachment files. For example, Station SLD. Once this is added in, you can see it populate in the attachment section and it has file name, the size, when it was uploaded, and who it was uploaded by. I'm also able to delete as well. And I can attach this file into relevant sections within the ACS. Now that we've covered off the station level, I'll start jumping into the different assets here. First one being transmission line. We're able to add an attachment here, add an asset here by clicking add. That'll populate a new asset, which shows you both the required and mandatory fields to be filled in. In this case, I need to create the asset name. The line type, overhead or underground, and the stage, and other relevant information according to circuit length, rated voltage, rated current, and the like, and impedance information. As we move through to generators, similarly here I can click add to create a generator. And here it's asking us to fill in the mandatory information first, as well as describe things such as the machine type. Now, when describing the machine type, this is another one of the dynamic fields, which I will show you shortly. If we go down to machine details, you can see that there's a relevant field here for synchronous rotor type. This will help to control what information is shown in other sections, such as characteristic curves. If I change this machine type up here in basic information to asynchronous, you can see that the machine details here have changed, and I'm able to select types relevant to asynchronous machine types. For example, starting with double squirrel cage, you can see that there's a certain number of characteristic curves required. If I change this through to variable rotor resistance, which was the old wound rotor, then this will change, and also doubly fed induction generator, which will change again. The other newly supported asset types are full rated inverter connected, which changes the machine details to full rated inverter connected type, being either full scale converter, wind turbine generator, or photovoltaic. Again, this will control information found within other sections, such as characteristic curves, depending on the connection type which you have. For example, photovoltaic, we've got capability curve and providing some helper text here which describes the type of information we're looking for, as well as information around rate of change limits, cell array configurations such as series or parallel or H connected, or There are a number of other configurations. Details on the power optimizer or DC to DC switching stage if applicable, and IV characteristic curves, current to voltage characteristic curves. And then you have the other relevant fields, which are very similar to what we had in the old existing system, such as frequency performance data. This is more around your under and over frequency settings. Excitation of voltage control system, where we've added a couple of other fields such as excitation system type and AVR control mode. And this will show you an example of where you start to see some potential compliance flags that will show up. Now, because I had selected this station as being connected to Transpower or connected to the grid, there's a requirement in the code to ensure that there is that the unit is in voltage control mode at all times. So this gives you an example of when something may have a potential compliance issue, highlighted by a blue flag here, some helper text down the bottom, and also if there are no other required errors, this will show you as blue against the asset and blue up on the tab as well. So now if we quickly move through into transformers, some of the changes that we've added for this are when filling in basic information, you're able to select number of windings per phase, for example, 3. And we've added tick boxes here, which will allow you to specify which tapped winding has a tap changer installed on it. This is particularly helpful compared to the old database where it only had one tap changer section, and if you had a transformer with multiple tap changers, it was challenging to add in relevant information. So as an example, I can tick HV and LV if I had HV main tap changer and an LV offload tap changer for a tertiary winding, for example. I can then fill in information relevant to each of these tap changers in the sections created below. When filling in these fields, you're also able to tick NA on the fields that are allowed and configured within the system. Energy storage devices is very similar to what was there previously. So all of the sections are relatively the same, so I won't jump into those too much. Then we have reactive power devices to the side here. As mentioned earlier in the presentations, there is greater support for asset types for reactive power devices, such as let's create a shunt capacitor, for example. I can select the asset type here, fill in the asset stage, and this will control what sort of information is expected to be filled in the below sections. As an example, if I change this through to static fire compensator, it will change the fields which are expected to be filled in, or even more for synchronous condenser. So once all of the assets have been filled in the relevant fields, then you're able to save your ACS. And asset owners are able to, asset owner admins are able to publish this and push it through to the system operator for assessment. What I'll also show you in another station which has some assets created is AO and SO comments and what happens when we duplicate and remove these assets. If I jump into this one, this is one that has already been through the workflow. It's now an information needed, which is denoted by an orange color and a question mark. Some additional help text here, which describes what state it's in and what the next expected action is. And asset owner admin and edit who have access to this statement are able to edit the ACS. Once I've ticked that, I'm able to navigate through to generators. You can see here that this generator has a couple of compliance flags and one basic information flag. If I fill that in, you'll see that that error will go away, and then blue is also highlighted up here at the tab level. You can see within these sections we have system operator comments and asset owner comments. You can see the auditability that we have against these comments as well. Now, these aren't threaded, they're just a single input, and the adding and deleting of these comments is controlled by the workflow. You can also see examples here for asset owner comments here. So this can be added or deleted to as you need to. When we duplicate an asset, you'll find that the asset owner comments and input data will be copied across to the new asset. But there are two fields which will be emptied when it's created, and that is the asset name to ensure that we have separate naming for assets, and the ACS stage as it may be in a separate stage. You'll also notice that the SO assessment comments haven't been copied across, but the AO comments supporting the input information have. What I can also do is show you an example of what happens around adding attachments. So if I save this ACS, you can see the list of attachments here for this particular ACS and the assets of which they are related to. Because I've duplicated it, all of the files that I had attached to G1 have now been copied across to G2. And I can remove and add attachments through to the other two other sections. For example, if I needed to replace the capability curve for any reason, I can then tick on this input field here. And another powerful feature is the ability to search your files as well if you've got quite a lot of files associated with the station. So I can start to add in these files here. And you can also, the same as the old system, add multiple files to a particular input field. Once these have been added and saved, you'll see that it will update. For example, these two here have been added to G2 but are not present on G1. If you had created an asset in error, let's say duplicating a potential asset, and you didn't need it, that's when the remove function comes into play. So that it will also ask you to confirm that you'd like to remove this statement, this asset from this statement. Whereas if a particular asset, let's say G2 for example, is being decommissioned, we request or we require you to move this through to decommissioned as a stage and then republish the ACS. It's just a cleaner way of handling information with an ACS and then to publish it. So now that I've done that, I'm able to publish the statement. It will ask me for a confirmation. And keep in mind, again, publishing can only be done by an asset owner admin. Once I confirm this, it will move through into the next state, being published in a blue color and a tick mark, and supporting text here as well. So lastly, the last thing we need to have a look at for functionality within the ACS is view version history. So if I go into this one, you can see that there are 5 versions created. This will always default be ordered so that the latest version is up the top. We have the same control in terms of rows per page and pagination once you're above the maximum number of rows per page. If I look in one of these current versions, first thing that you'll see, which is the information within the row, is the version number, the state, the last activity, which can either be the state transition or the last time it's been saved, the number of changes, the number of AO comments, and the number of SO comments, also with a button to view that particular ACS in context. The next thing is the version workflow timeline. This will show each of the states that it's progressed through as part of that revision. To start off with, that is when the draft was created and when it was last saved, then who it was published by and when. Within these 3 tabs, I'm able to see what input data changes have been made, AO comment changes and SO comment changes. So from here, there are 2 columns, what it's changed from and what it's changed to. In the legacy database, this only showed you what it had changed to, so it's a little bit more challenging to figure out what it had changed from. In this example, I created a new generator. So all this is sitting in no value, and it moved through to information on the right-hand side. I was also added some information here for some of the AO comment changes. And there are no SO comment changes because this is still unpublished. However, if I go down to previous version, you can see that this draft was created at a particular time by a particular user, published by a particular user at a time, began assessment by the system operator user, and last saved at a particular time, and then when it was moved into a final state of information needed. Now, this all ties back again to that workflow state model that we discussed within the slides. And again, here you're able to see some of the SO assessment comments that will have been entered against particular information. So this shows you the station name, the asset type, the name, the section, and then the field here as well, alongside what had changed from and what it had changed to. For example, another feature which I touched on earlier is viewing in a particular point in time. So for example, if I wanted to view what was in a statement on version 3 at that particular point in time, I would click view, and that will load the statement in its historical state, denoted here by the wording in brackets. And you're able to see all of the information at that point in time, including the attachments. So if attachments are added or deleted post this revision, these will still be supported in the previous version. You're also able to download this ACS if you wanted to take it for reference to anything, or if you were looking to take the latest version and take a copy of it for meetings or taking it to site, for example. So that's covered off all of the main functions of the ACS. So what we will do is navigate back to the slides and start to discuss what's next for ACS in terms of an OCP context. So we are at the location of the blue down arrow on the left-hand side. And you can see that the next couple of items are the supporting information and video tutorials, which we will send out on the 3rd of December. This will be sent out by email and also published on the Transpower website. On the same day, we will also move the legacy ACS database through to read-only, which means all of the users will be moved through to view only and will not be able to edit their ACSs. But they will be able to still look at the information for comparison with the new ACS within OCP if they wish to. We'll have a final data migration on the 6th and 7th, which will take a snapshot of the data after the close of business on 3rd of December to get the most up-to-date information. And so between this period and when we have go live, we'll have a few items here. One is there's a freeze between close of business 3rd of December to 8th of December where information will not be able to be entered into either system. However, if you have urgent ACS change information, we ask that you send this through as part of an urgent ACS change form through to NM Data email address, and this is covered off as part of the urgent ACS form on the Transpower website as well. We will do a final data migration on 6th and 7th with final user migration on the 7th. We ask asset owner admins to go through and check for all of your edit and view users that they still have the relevant, that you edit for the relevant access control for your statements if this is necessary, because we will only be migrating the users and their relevant user roles. Post go live, we will have some walk-in sessions. Before the festive period, this will be in the week of 13th to the 17th of December. The actual dates and times are to be confirmed and sent out. After the festive period, we will have walk-in sessions between around 10th to 28th of Jan, and we will confirm these through email as well. The last item is legacy database shutdown on 1st of December. So the legacy database will be available in read-only mode between 3rd of December and 1st of December if you wanted to do any comparison between the two systems.
Just to mention there, Carl, and so with the walk-in sessions, that will be in, there'll be an online walk-in session. So although we're calling it that, we don't expect you to come in and have a chat. It's just going to provide you an opportunity to ask your questions individually to Carl, and he can help you out with your specific situation.
Yep. Now we move through to questions.
Yeah, so it's your opportunity to ask any questions if you'd like. So that's us finished up with the content. You can see here on the screen, we've got the option to open up the chat. So you hover in the middle of the screen, you'll see the wee chat box, you click on that, and then you can type in any questions there. We'll take the time to answer those over the audio, and yeah, we'll be here for the next 10 or so minutes. Send them through. If you would prefer to ask a question privately, then you can get in touch with Carl after the session. If there's any we can't address now, then we'll also be getting back to you after the session. All right, thank you very much for your time, and yeah, have a nice day.
Yeah, we'll just wait for some of these. Looks like we've got a couple of people looking to ask us some questions, so we'll just wait for those to come through.
Yeah, sure.
So we've got a good question here around handling of attachment versions going forward, and archiving or removing of old attachments. So if I jump back into the system, you're able to delete any attachments that you wish from a particular station. Let's say, for example, I'm in this test station. I'll just go and edit this ACS. I can go down here and delete, for example, this station SLD and confirm. Once I've done that and it's saved, I can then republish, and what's shown is for that particular version at a point in time, the file will be deleted. But if I go through into version history, which you're able to see here in this attachment, I've deleted this file. But if I go through to a previous version, let's say the one just before it, and then navigate through to attachments, you'll see that it will still be existing on the previous version. So that's effectively how versioning will be done. If you are looking to update a particular version of the same file, we would ask that you, the easiest way would be to either put in a new file with a different name, or to delete it and replace it as part of creating a new draft and republishing the statement. We have another question here. Are the cat banks reactors only ones that are associated with generation plant? Effectively, yes, because this ACS, as it stands now, are it's only for ones that are supporting as part of a station, as part of a generating station, where it will help to support your voltage support obligation, asset owner performance obligations. So yes, we're only expecting that CAPS reactors, synchronous condensers, or anything of the like is just there for supporting the actual generation plant itself. Hopefully in future we may look at bringing in distribution level ACSs, but at this stage the new ACS platform is just replacing the old one, which is generating station assets and support devices only.
You've got another question coming through.
We'll move through into the next one. I'm waiting for that last question. I'll just show you the last slide. So this is just what's next for the operations customer portal. So we've done AWFLs, we have just about done ACS shortly, and then the future applications will be planned outage coordination process, New Zealand generation balance, and then moving through into dispensations and equivalence process after that. We're unable to give any timeframes as of yet, but we will be uploading information through to the Transpower website once it's available.
We'll just give you some more time to ask any questions. We've got one more that's just come through.
Fantastic question. I haven't actually touched on that, so that's a great question. The question was, what happens on instances when you have acquired an old generation station where there's records for some assets? So when generating stations change hands, as in it gets sold to a new asset owner or the like, we will have a function on our administrator side where we can request that a particular station and all of its relevant information and assets gets transferred through to the new asset owner. And from there, that new asset owner will then be able to take over editing and replacing any of the information in there and republishing. So that's how we'll handle transferring of ownership of assets. If you've taken over a station which has some decommissioned assets or historical assets and they need updates, then yeah, feel free to just carry on with that after you have sent the request through to system operator, and we'll process that request and then it'll be back over to your side. I hope that has covered off any of the questions you may have had. If you have any further ones, as Graham had mentioned earlier, feel free to either put them in the chat or get through to me personally. Otherwise, we have a support email address, which I didn't have on screen, is SO Customer Portal. So SO_customer_portal@transpower.co.nz. And if you send any of your queries through to that email address, then we'll be able to respond to those appropriately. And we've just added that through into the chat as well.
All right, so thank you very much for attending, everybody. As we said, you can continue to ask questions if you've got any. We'll be here to answer them. Otherwise, then you can click leave in the top right. I believe it's a red button. You can click leave or close the window. So thank you very much for coming along and have a nice day.